In 1350, what we know as the idyllic French countryside was a living hell. For more than 15 years, the people had suffered at the hands of English invaders. Little did they know that this war would last for another 100 years. But through this crucible of fighting, famine, and plague, there would emerge the modern nation of France. England's King, Edward III, looked jealously across the English Channel. Wanting France for his own, he had added the fleur-de-lis, the symbol of France, to his own royal standard. This was an all-out declaration of war. And in 1337, he invaded. But France already had a king, Philippe VI. As the English burned their way across the land, Philippe's army and his legendary knights marched to meet them and came face to face with the English longbow. A simple weapon, but the most devastating the knights had ever faced. The heroes of France fell to storms of English arrows. The war engulfed the French countryside. By 1351, the conflict was focused on Brittany. One fight stands out as a spectacular display of chivalry and a symbol of the wider conflict between the two enemy nations. The Combat of the 30 is still commemorated here in Brittany. It was a dispute between two local families. Supported by the opposing sides in the war, the French and English commanders decided to settle it through a trial of knightly combat. Each side would choose 30 champions to fight on neutral ground. France prepared to defend itself against England's finest. Intent on ending the suffering of the French peasantry, Sir Jean de Beaumanoir sent a challenge to the English commander. 30 champions on each side would compete in a tournament for final claim to Brittany. With the battleground of the Halfway Oak agreed upon, Sir Jean set out to gather support from local knights. As a knight himself, Sir Jean followed the strict rules of chivalry and was expected to protect the local peasantry and ensure peace.
Bien si fais vos commandements. Comme vos plaisent.
Most medieval tournaments were friendly in nature, held for sport and glory, but the Combat of the 30 was arranged between opponents mired in war. English raids had torn through the countryside of Brittany and brought great hardship to the people. Sir Jean spotted an English raiding party attacking a nearby farmstead. The French knights defeated the English raiders, and Sir Guy de Rochefort joined Sir Jean's party. Sir Jean's search next brought him to Sir Geoffroy du Bois, whose squires were contending with a detachment of English longbowmen. The knights would use the great speed of their war horses to charge the archers and overwhelm them. The English longbowmen fell, but the French knights knew the enemy would attempt to retake the hilltop fortification and steeled themselves for further attacks. With Sir Geoffroy by his side, Sir Jean had secured the outpost.
Retrayez vos amours. Avertissez votre courage, compagnon.
À l'archangi besoigne. Si obéis.
Page et comprens.
Commandem suis en archon erit. Ainsi soit-il.
Bien soyez.
Mais Jerry d'un continent. J'obtiens père à vos services.
Page! Page commandement!
Looking to secure his honor, a young knight held his ground on a bridge in Sir Jean's path.
Chacun sends sa place!
Honorably conceding defeat in the duel, Sir Yves Charel joined the cause.
Regnez vos armes! Mettons nos sans l'avouer! Regnez vos armes!
Sir Jean entered the staging area for the tournament, where he prepared to choose which knights would join him in battle. Each knight would be accompanied by his squires, young nobles in training to become knights themselves.
Honor reste d'obéir.
Aveyevotch, Veci commandement. J'ai besoin.
Sir Jean had selected his champions. As the sun rose, the two sides entered the arena, ready for the first round of combat.
Quel est votre plaisir?
Honor est d'obéir.
Page, Blache, Veci commandement.
Incontinent.
Compagnon,
Point je suis votre serveuse. En votre service.
Compagnon, reste parole.
Claiming an easy victory in the first round, the French champions left the arena to recover their strength.
Lancier, à votre ordonnance. Envoyez.
Just change arms.
Attendez, si comme vos voldrez.
Refreshed and reinvigorated, the French knights returned to the arena for another round of combat. The combat of the 30 was about to decide which nation would control the Duchy of Brittany.
Incontinent.
Triumphant, Sir Jean de Beaumanoir and his loyal knights claimed victory. The combat of the 30 had decided control of Brittany in favor of the French. Little did the two sides know, this was just the beginning of a bitter war that would outlive them all. In the 100 Years' War, the English used a terror tactic, a raid through enemy territory, intended to intimidate and provoke the French into battle. It was called Chevauchee. The principal weapon for Chevauchee was fire. And one of the ways it was delivered was with incendiary arrows.
Challenge with incendiary arrows? Keeping them alight.
One type of incendiary arrow was fueled with gunpowder.
We've got charcoal, got sulfur, and we've got saltpeter. Saltpeter is the main ingredient. The more oxygen you put into it, the hotter it burns. Of course, when it's on an arrow, when it's being shot, you've got a turbocharged airstream.
The chemicals are bound together with brandy, left to dry, and poured into a linen bag. The extra long arrowhead is inserted into the bag and then tied off to secure it. It is then sealed by dipping it into boiling tree resin. This resin, which itself is highly flammable, provides a waterproof casing. It also shields the burning gunpowder, so the wind doesn't put it out in flight.
Now that looks deadly, and I really want to shoot it.
The art to shooting an incendiary arrow is timing. Too early, and it will go out. Too late, it will spit at you like a dragon.
That was just evil. That was great.
The word Chevauchee means horse raid, and it was mobile light horsemen who spearheaded the attacks. They took gold and silver from the churches, valuables from wealthy citizens, and as much food and drink as they could find from anyone. A Chevauchee was scorched earth warfare to create discontent amongst the enemy's subjects, perhaps even to get them to turn against their king. An army on campaign needed a decisive battle. And a Chevauchee was intended to taunt the enemy to come out and fight. After victory at the Combat of the 30, the French faced devastating raids from England's Black Prince. But France's King John II was closing in. Jean finally caught the English near the city of Poitiers in September 1356. The French army outnumbered the English by thousands. King Jean himself joined the fight, but what seemed a certain victory for France soon turned into a nightmare. The English longbow devastated the mighty French army. An endless hail of arrows gutted the main French force. Then the English captured King Jean. The fight was over. The Battle of Poitiers was another catastrophic defeat for the French. The English had destroyed most of France's nobility in a single day. Now they turned their attention towards taking the French capital, Paris. The invaders marched unopposed towards Paris. The remains of some of the medieval walls of Paris still stand today. As the English army approached, the terrified locals sought shelter behind these defenses. Could France's capital withstand the full might of the Black Prince's army? The English Black Prince had raided the French countryside without mercy, and now his army had come for the capital. With the English on their doorstep, it fell to the French army and the people of Paris to defend the walls of their proud city. Hoping to avoid open battle, the French began fortifying the city, manning the walls and calling every available soldier to his post.
Que faut-il donc besoigner? Pour vos servir.
As the French hastened their preparations, Several detachments of English soldiers were spotted closing in on the city.
Besoin de nos attentes, Manance. Reste pour la besogne, Manance. Vecchière, Mériens. Advertance, tout le monde. Lors de nos salaires. Oyez, tout le monde. Veille à la mine.
Oyez les ordonnances. Fouiller est ma toute vie. Manance, ouvrons donc. Veille à la mine.
Attendez les commandements, Manance. Manance, nous devons saler.
The English showed no mercy, burning their way to Paris via 3 routes, each of which was home to villages and farms that supplied the capital.
Que faut-il donc besoigner?
Oi, mestière de moi. Oui, d'aves fuir. Vayez moi besoigne.
Lancière en place.
Blanche bâtie, je sais.
Warhorse, si souhait.
En besoin. Dostia l'oreille.
Oh, Manance, reste à ouvrir. Si vous exploitiez, un besoin. Lors bâti, oil, mestière des mouettes. Je veux ça mettre mes riens.
Campagnonne, lance sur feu.
Que faut-il donc besoigner? Besoigner à faire? Si, comme un volette. Tous de ya laurette.
Besoin à faire? Fouillez ma toute vie.
Sur quoi me faut-il faire?
Having struck out at the English front line, the French had slowed the enemy's advance.
Chevauchee Bastille. Oil, mestière de moi. Lors bâtie, je sais.
Que faut-il donc besoigner? Tous de ya laurette. Besoin à faire? Lors bâti, je sais. Oil, mestière des mouettes. Chevauchee Bastille. Oh, me faut trahir? Vecchière Mériens. Vayez-moi besoin. Chevauchee Bastille.
Lancière, gardez de vos.
On me laisse te parer.
En besoin. Que faut-il donc besoigner? Veille à la mine. Oh, me faut trahir. Chevauchee Bastille.
Sur quoi me faut-il traire? Chessmets vos Arbelestrauss. Arbeletière?
Vayez-moi besoin. Lors bâtie, je sais.
La lance preste.
Que faut-il donc besoigner? Lors bâti, je sais tuer. Besoigner à faire? Tous de ya laurette.
As the French continued to rally their army, the English took the last of the surrounding villages and had almost encircled Paris.
En besoin. Besoigner à faire? Fouillez ma toute vie.
Vayez-moi besoin.
Lancière en or.
besoigné.
Une autre bersaise.
Oi, mestière de mouet.
With the countryside in flames and the English at the city gates, the French armies steeled themselves for battle.
Bonne besoigne.
Now came the capital's true test.
Arbalestre.
Would the mighty walls of Paris hold against a fearsome English siege?
Que faut-il donc besoigné? Chevauchee Bastille.
The Parisian Guard raised the alarm as the English began their first assault on the city walls.
Sur quoi faut-il traire?
Oh, me faut trahir. Lance Batige s'essuie.
Oh, me faut trahir!
Chevaucheur, soyez prêts.
Arbalestier. À point. Arbalestière. Alors,
Baïs-moi!
M de jouet.
Que faut-il donc besoigné?
Arbaleste pareil. Arbalestier. À point pièce basse. Dictez-moi une bersaise.
En besoigne.
Courage, lancière, en ordre.
Die Chevaucheurs sont prêts.
Compagnon. Chessmets vos avant.
Baillet bien, Weiss. Lance Bastille s'estue. Oh, me faut. Oh, jetzt, tous le monde.
Les Chevaucheurs se scoutent. Chevaucheurs, soyez prêts.
Quel vent vous donc me joignez?
Chevaucheurs, en pleine course.
Compagnon. Reste pour la besoin. Arbalestier. Arbalestier. Alors.
Besoigne fait.
Chessmets vos arbalestres. Compagnon. Prêt. Chessmets vos habillements. Arbalestier.
Lancière, gardez ce boss.
The French army fought valiantly, repelling the first English attack.
Oi, mestière de mouet. Suisse en point mine.
La lance prête.
Oui,
Les Chevaucheurs sont prêts. Leur terrain, Chevaucheurs. Chevaucheurs, pointe de merci. Dans l'avance, Chevaucheurs.
Autre bersaise.
Tout le monde.
advertence tout le monde.
Pouvons savoir mestier de Bois.
Oh, jetzt les ordonnances. Pouvons savoir
Die Chevaucheurs escoutent.
besoin de faire.
Dictez-moi une bersaise.
Lancière, un ordre.
Chessmets, Arbalestier. Alors.
Même besoin.
Arbalestre. Chessmets, Arbalestier.
Il n'y faut que la vie. Poignette, ça SPO. Compagnon, il tire. Il n'y faut que la vie.
Chessmets, habillement.
Heil, mestier des mouets. Dostia Lauretz.
Chevaucheurs sunt prêts. Nos allons, Chevaucheurs.
Obelest au col. Avant.
Chevaucheurs.
Compé. Aubelwir. Abarmein. Aubelestier. A pointiet svarsiveille.
Oh, jetzt les ordonnances. Je vous amène mes riens.
Die Chevaucheurs escouten.
Balance presse. Quoi faut-il faire?
Obéir, c'est vertu.
Lancière en place.
Obelest preuve.
Die Chevaucheurs sunt prêts. Et si souhaité.
Obelest.
Die Chevaucheurs sunt prêts. Chevaucheurs ennemis. En pleine course. Nos allons, Chevaucheurs. Request for the way.
Oh, excuse le monde.
Accordé.
Besoin d'y faire. Chevauchee Bastille.
Il n'y faut que l'advis. Soyez prest, compagnie.
Jetsmets vos habillament. Obelestier. Obelest. Dictes-moi une Versailles.
Compagnie.
Obelestre. Jetsmets vos.
Courage, lancière.
En besoin.
Oyez, tous le monde. Oyez, les ordonnances.
Attendez les commandements.
The French defense of their capital held firm, wearing down the English invaders one by one. Although the walls of Paris had been breached, the French could still hold the city, so long as its mighty landmarks did not fall.
Oh, me foul crime.
Jetsmets avant, Obelestier.
Presse, suis de votre...
Mestier des mouets.
Vayez, moi, besoigne.
Compagnon, nos despartans briemant.
Vayez mouets besoin. Lors battige s'estui.
Courage, lancière. En ordre.
Que faut-il donc besoigner?
Jetsmets bien.
En besogne.
Heil, mestier des mouettes.
Vayez mouet besogne.
Acest mesmos Alberescon! Alberescon! Acest mesmos!
On me fa au train. Que parti donc besogne?
Dictez-moi une personne!
En besogne. Besogne à faire.
The enemy grew ever more desperate as their ranks thinned and their hopes of victory faded.
Compagnon!
Anan?
Ici, les accompagnés.
Oyez, vec.
Acest mesmos!
Archer, le ferai-je.
Oil.
Oyez, tous devant!
Lance batterie, je sais.
Autre Versailles!
Que faute, ils s'envoient.
Voyez, c'est que ça... Obéleste au col! Avant!
Lancière, gardez ce boss.
L'heure est... Attendez, les...
Obélestier! Appointez de space! Avant, Obélestier! Sur quoi me faut-il traire?
Oh, me faut trahir. Chevauchee bas besogne à faire. Lors batige s'estuie.
On me fa au train. Tosti à l'oreille. Besogne à faire? Que faut-il donc besoigner? Giovanni.
Et metz vos habillement! Obélestier!
Oh, me faut...
Advertance tout le monde. Tosti à l'oreille.
Access Metzvos, compagnon. Avant, compagnon.
Archer, si comme le...
Chestnuts, votre
Compagnon.
Obélestier! Avant! Allons!
Avertis cette spot. Compagnon.
Chevauchee bas de vers ouf obéit au commandement. Même besogne. Tous de ya Laurez.
En besogne. Giovanni Bastir.
Tres tous sommes...
Obélestier! À point
À la zone. En monstre, c'est... Les ordonnances. Chevalier.
Obéleste au col! Chascus et Cocax! Chessmet avant! Obélestier! Obélestier!
À la zone.
Compagnon! Brest! Chessmet! Obélestier! Allons!
Thomas Rotter.
Que faut-il?
Thomas
Overestière, s'il faut. Overestière, avant, allons. Overestière, allons.
Defeated and demoralized by the strength of the French defense, the Black Prince's army abandoned their siege of the capital. Paris celebrated victory, but this was not the last test the French would face in their struggle to win the war. The battlefields of the 100 Years' War were full of danger. To defend against these weapons, a new type of armor was developed: plate armor.
Plate armor clad the knight in an articulating exoskeleton of hardened steel. A hard outer shell that still flexes and moves with the body.
It provided impressive protection and was an extraordinary technological achievement.
Now, one of the ways that armor gets its strength is through shape. Both of these pieces are made out of the exact same thickness as steel, but I can show you there's one stronger than the other. Here's the one with no shape. You see it buckles immediately. If I swap it for one that's been forged to have strength and shape, you can see it's much stronger. It's going nowhere.
It wasn't just the shape that gave it strength. It was also how the metal was treated by the armorer.
Now, the benefits of using heat is it obviously makes the piece more plastic, more ductile, lets me shape it. But the fuel also adds layers of carbon into the outer surface. This helps me increase the hardness and strength of the material.
The art of the armorer was being able to judge the temperature of the metal by eye, managing the heat to create resilience in the metal. The combination of heat-treated metal and rigid shapes meant that armor didn't need to be so thick and heavy, making it much easier to fight in. But good quality plate armor did have its downside. It was very expensive.
Now, not everyone could afford full steel plate armor. For the common man, there is the brigandine. Now, these are made up of overlapping steel plates that are then riveted through a textile outer. This gives you a much bigger range of movement, but is limited and is not as strong as a full steel breastplate. That said, it is much cheaper and much easier to maintain.
At its best, the armored knight was invincible. But armor didn't just provide defense. It was also a weapon and an expression of a knight's power and prestige. Armor transformed its wearer into a work of art. The walls of Paris held out against the English onslaught. England's King Edward and the Black Prince abandoned the siege. They marched towards Chartres to try their luck at conquering a less formidable target. But before they could attack, a violent storm hit the army. Killing 1,000 English soldiers in a tempest of hail and freezing winds. To Edward, this Black Monday disaster seemed like divine retribution. A sign that it was time to stop waging war and make peace with France's King Jean. But even as peace between kings was reached, the people of France were still living in bloodshed and turmoil. Between 1358 and 1370, France was in chaos. Peasant uprisings, rampaging bands of mercenaries, and civil war ravaged the country. Peasants rose in rebellion, killing their lords and wreaking havoc. Mercenary bands also roamed the land. Known as routiers, they had once been hired by the English to fight against the French, but were cut loose when peace was reached. They systematically ravaged and pillaged towns across France. And with King Jean prisoner in England, his son Charles the Dauphin faced homegrown attacks on his rule by powerful French lords, beset from all sides. The Dauphin's forces had to regain control over their own country. Having only recently been crowned King of France, Charles V dispatched his army to the French-held village of Évreux to forge order from chaos. From here, the army would move to extinguish three major threats: bands of roving mercenaries harrying the countryside, a peasant uprising, and attacks from a rival for the French crown, Charles of Navarre. The French army would start by reclaiming the rebel-held villages of Cocherel, Jouy, and Croissy.
Pariez et bene!
Parat, in avant, arquière. Momentez-y, arquière. Parat pour la bourra. Préparat, arquière. In avant, arquière, arquière, ambulance.
Lanques paratas!
Parat pour la bourra.
Mandesqued. Monastial.
Mandesquid.
Parat pour venir.
La bourse Perat. Parat pour materia. Quid me. Cose sera ma sonata.
Farats pour la bourra. 6 hommes. La bourse Spérance. Retourno comme materia. Quelle? Cito. Buon labor. Mandesqued. Qued labor. Movenskito. Yoma sono la
Lanques, si, si!
Preparate.
As the French army struggled to regain control of the countryside, they were struck by a band of English routiers. These mercenaries had been cut loose by the English army and were plundering the countryside in order to make a living.
Benefect. Momentez-y, arquière. 6 hommes. Yoma sono la coupe. Parate, arquière. Parate pour la bourra.
Comme prévu.
Ouais, parate, arquière.
Langue, bandez, lanquier! Manio!
Equitas. Si. Obedio.
Parate, equitas. Secund.
Momentez-y, intendo. Bene, bene.
Pariez et préparez!
The French forces eliminated the routier attack, but more were still raiding the countryside in search of provisions and riches. The routier demanded payment from the French, or they would continue their horrifying raids.
Si sommes. Scolte bene. Secco materi labor speranza. Camino. Ah, Félicette Beat. Parat pour venir. Vado labura. Qued labour. Mande squad. Buonascial. Parat pour labourar.
Si, cavale parat, en boulot. Si, respect. Si volé. En boulot.
Equites sunt paratos.
Courso, préparate.
Parat. Ambola. Parat pour venir.
Sagitaina. Tourma. Presente, nonque, sopro. Parate, archi.
Equites atten...
Archier, parat.
Audience. Si sommes.
Parat.
Momentesi.
Ambola.
Yek, ici, gene. Oh. Une avance. Nonque, sopro, parat. Parate, archier. Perfecte. Parate, archer.
Qued labour. Qued me. Cos'è sera massonata? Labor speranza. Io massono la cose.
Arco parat. Lanquier parat. Parat. In avant. Presente. Lanque soproium. Lanquier neco.
Mande ci sommes. Vado laburar.
Qued Mendes? Comme Mendes. Lanquier parat. Cavallo ici. Cum grande course.
Buon labour.
Caval parat. Perfecte. Certe. Meneste bonus. Perfect. Comme Mendes. Cavallo ici. Perfecte. Cum grande course. Simoleis. Ambulo. Perfecte.
The French discovered the routier hidden camp and could put an end to the English raids if they could destroy the camp. The French paid off the routier and were free of further raids.
Prépariez l'enquière. Coursor obéissance.
Parat pour venir. Qued labour.
Et je li demande.
Parats pour labourar. Vado labourar.
Parats pour laburar. Io massono.
Qued me. Io massono la cose. Si sommes. Ah, parats pour labourar. Io massono la cose.
Mande squad. Qued me.
Benefect.
Io massono la cose.
Parat pour venir. Vado labourar.
Si sommes. Labour speranza. Cose sera massonata.
Caval parat. Oye, oye.
Equites sunt paratos.
Parat pour venir. Vado laborar.
Mandesqued?
Me plect.
Qued me?
Prompt. Nos menacet! Consort obéir. Perfecté! Oyez, oyez. Cavallo ici. Comprendo. Commandes. Comprendo. Ambulo.
Equites sunt paratos.
L'encaisse. Varier, préparez. Venez.
Labour Spérance.
Labour spéci, comprendo.
Equites,
Parat
attention.
porvenir.
Secund mandement.
Si sommes. Vado la Mandesqued. Io mas.
Qued labour? Cos'è sarà massonata? Labour spérance.
Qued me. Movo.
Tourna. L'encaisse. Présentez l'encaisse. Perfecté.
Dolmerie, udite servientes. Come mondes.
Momentessi, arquière.
Qued labour.
Mandesqued?
Parat pour labourar. Cose.
Parat por vit.
Si sommes. Io ma sono la cose.
Arquière
Parat pour
pas.
venir. Cose sera maçon. Labour Spérance. Vado labourar.
Si sommes. Vado laborar. Io ma sono la cose.
Qued me.
Tout sodite.
Présentez le marié. Être préparé. L'enquier. Raté.
Ordinete.
Udite.
Si comprendo.
Qued labour.
Momentessi. Raté. Arquière.
Entendo.
Cette béate.
L'encaisse, paradas. Vadé, l'encaisse. Parade, obé. Arco, parade.
Escolte. Movamos, valetus.
Escolte bene.
Tem de retornar.
Réparate, arquière. L'encaisse. Présentez l'encaisse. Momentez. Vadé.
Si comprendo.
Mandesqued.
Quemandes.
Mi plecte.
Retorno comme materia. Vido, si.
Et celi mandement. Jamais.
Arco, parade.
Parat pour labourar.
Varier et valet. Parade.
Come mondes.
Tout sodite. Vido, si.
Attention. Non, Chevalier.
L'encaisse, paradas. Veniez. Parate,
Ambula.
Tout sodite. Si. Bene.
parade. Momentessi, arquière.
Equites in avant.
Si sommes. Vado labourar.
Varier, sigeme. Parate.
Audience.
Orbace, bove.
Et celi movamos, valetus. Cos'è sarà massona?
Presente. Bene. Preparate. Vade, arquière.
Dolme facile, cavalier.
Que demandes? Simoles. Respect. Perfecté. Menacé pour nos.
Toutes audite. Comme me.
Bene audite.
Secund mandement.
Si. Cavallo ici. Buona. Cum concours. Respect. Cum concours. Commandes. Oye, oye. Assulto linini. Cavallo. Nos menacem.
Quitamus.
Parade. Si. Ambulo. Si est.
Atten, equite.
Cursor, cum grande course.
Dolme bien. Pace, bove.
Si. Momentes in avant, arquière.
Ordine tenens.
Les sont ici.
Equitansi, comprendo.
Nintendo.
Facile, cavalier.
Momentes si, arquière. Yente. Que demandes? Comprendo.
Equites a te...
Parier et préparé. Perfecté.
Escolte bene. Cose sera massona.
L'anche. Bene, bene. Si, sito.
Ascolte bene.
Preparate, arquière.
Dolme, quitamus.
Parate, arquière. Momentes si, arquière. Presente. L'anche soprioxa.
Attention, attention. Equite.
L'anche. Parate. Audience. Que demandes?
Audite, militaire.
Cum grande course. Perfecté.
Tuts audite.
Caval parate. Oye, oye. Comprendo.
Ordine tenens.
Parier et préparier, l'anquiers.
Quid mandes?
Dolme bien.
Cavaliers. A medio course.
Presente, comprendo. Parade.
Attention.
Parate.
Pace,
Arquière. In avant. Anquier, parade. L'anquiers. Sopre, non mot. Parate, arquière.
Mane, ordine.
Cavalario, si. Quid mandes?
Audite, militaire.
Pardon. Cavallo.
Mea sultan!
Vado. Sito. A medio course. Sito. Cavallo. A medio course. Vado. Cavallo.
Parier et préparier, l'anquiers.
Dolme bien, quitamus. Orchestre. Rex de l'ennemi! Quitamus! Pace, bove!
Tuts audite.
Omes, prépare.
Audite. Quitte.
Que demandes?
Attention. Novos ordines.
Preparate, arquière.
Morte l'espère.
Present, l'anquier, écoute. Non mot. Parate, arquière.
Mane, ordine tenens. Equite sunt par. Comme montes. Chilis! Pace, Chevalier! Quitamus! Equite sa orchestre!
L'anquier.
Equite Chevalier!
L'anquier, soprioxa. Preparate.
Audite, militaires!
L'anquier, preparate.
Escolte bene. Comprendo. Cos'è sarà massonata?
Bene, in avanti. Bene. In avanti, servientes. Udite, servientes. Dite. Quitte. Dite. In avanti, servientes. Sì.
Temps de retournar. Comme me. Temps de retournar.
Cavallarius parat!
Si. Cavallo ici.
Escolte bene. Io ma sono la cose.
Caraformatant!
Tutti udite. Vado a lavorare.
Moment ici, archière. Parate, archière.
Buon lavoro.
Parat.
Pace.
Attention.
Mondesqued. Camino.
Mondesqued.
E Cilimon de Mont.
Allez, excavo.
Caval parat. Ambulo.
Escolte bene.
Si, orchestre.
Comme i trenca. Tutti udite.
Udite, servientes.
Caval parat. Oye, oi. Effect. Oye, oi. Cours, course.
Qued me. Vado labora.
Coursor obéissance. Cum grande course. Cavallo ici.
In avanti, servientes!
Qued me.
Quemandes. Tourma. Caval parat. Oye, oye. Simuleis. Ambulo. Commandes. Comprendo. Veillant. Fini.
Qued labo.
Quemandes. Rompe.
Mondesqued.
Si. Cum grande course.
Bene, udite. In avanti.
Parat pour labora.
Udite. Udite, in avanti. Dite.
Archière parat.
Bene, udite.
Udite.
Quitte.
Parat pour venir. Cose sera massona.
Tourma. L'encaisse.
Attention! Quitte!
Colonnes, parade ses prompts.
Escolte bene. Dams de retorna. Movamos vale tous. Comme me. Tous au dams de retorna. Movamos vale tous. Movamos vale tous. Eccelim con me. Con me. Si, comprendo. Si, comprendo. Dams di retorna. Sito. Si, bene. Bien fait. Movamos vale tous. Comme me. Dams di retorna. Movamos vale tous. Vite aussi.
Colonnes sont ici.
Qu'est demandé? Perfecté. Cavallo ici.
Parade!
Espero tu mandato.
Dolme bien!
Equites in avant.
Ci sommes. Vado laburar.
Variez et prépariez l'enquière.
Préparate, arquier.
Attention.
Non, perfecté.
In avant, arquier.
Ordis.
Momentendo. Parate, vale, arquier. Sieste.
Ambula.
Bene.
Attention, second commandement.
Parate.
Variez et vadez.
Bene, bene.
Audi civiliers.
Parate, vale, arquier.
In ayuda!
In avant, arquier.
Ovecchio.
Audience.
Variez, variez!
Presente. Vale, arquier. Oye.
Equites attention.
Ici, arquier. Arquier. In avant. Dérouté. In avant, arquier. Arquier.
In taking the village of Jouy, the French army was closer to stemming the peasant rebellion and regaining control.
Audience. Obedio. Bene, bene. Moment, arquier. In avant.
Course respect.
Attention.
Préparate. Bene, bene. Moment, in avant, arquier.
The village of Croissy, rich in gold deposits, was a crucial town for the French to reclaim.
Arquier. In avant. Parate, vale, arquier.
The central monastery town of Cocherel would continue to send out rebel attack parties to weaken the French army.
Ambula.
L'enquête vallée.
Moment, ici, arquier.
Ordine tenet.
Nintendo. Audience.
Carace.
Préparate. Bene. Dérouté. In avant, arquier.
Elline equites.
Parate, vale, arquier. Yecte seguita. Arquier. In avant.
The French army defeated the rebels at Croissy and took control of the gold-rich village.
Qu'est demandé?
The central monastery town of Cocherel was still under the control of rebel peasants.
Oyez,
The French
oyez.
army would have to take it before they could launch an assault on Charles of Navarre.
Ordine tenet.
Barats pour la bourrare. Come sono la cose?
Dolme bien.
Non, momente vade, archier.
Labur Speranz. Io ma sono la cose.
Audite, milites.
Parate, archiers. Deus
Attention.
Ambula, presenti, sito.
Attention, facile, cavalier.
Parat, Deus Deus
Audite, milites. Dolme, Guidamus.
L'enquête s'offre, préparate, archier. In avant.
Ordine tenet. Audite, milites.
Parier et préparier, l'enquête.
Pace bove. Equites in avant. Guidamus. Si, comprendo. Come mon...
Parier et préparier. Momente intendo.
Ordine...
Presenti, Nico.
In avant, colonel. Quoi de l'amour?
Atten est facile,
Labur Quito.
Eccelim, sì, bene.
Dolme bien.
L'enquête, préparate, Ambula. L'enquête, centre Oxa. Parat, vado maintenant. Parat. Edifico presente l'enquête. Edifico capitantes.
Ordine come montes.
Ecce mandamento. Cose sarà ma sonata?
Coursor, aucune grande course. Cavallo ici. Commandes. Cavallo ici. Parate, archers. Edifico capitano. L'enquête sopra. Momente si, esculte. Deus è. Intendo. Momente si, archers. Deus è.
Equites sus favorita!
Parate, archers. Vado maintenant.
Attention, novos ordines. Audit, attention. No
Parier et prêt. L'enquête paratas. Parate, archers.
Audite, militaire.
L'enquête, veniez. Parate, in avant, archers. Presente l'enquête. Préparate, allez, parier et préparier l'enquête. Est, sigeme.
Susi. Esfect. Dolme, Guidamus.
L'enquête comprende. Momentes vade, archers.
Sommes Spartans. Nostrayet! Mandement audit.
Parier.
Equites in avant. Sus instruments! Sub instruments! Azul! Cavalier! Sus instruments! Tuts instruments movent!
Préparate, Artiers.
Ordine, oui, d'amour.
Moment d'ici, Artiers. Yekte, seguit.
Ordine, quite.
Parate, Artiers. Deusé. Deusé.
The French army took control of the rebel villages, and the peasant uprising was subdued. But to keep control over the region, they would need to defend its center of influence, the monastery at Cocherel. Northeast of Cocherel, Charles of Navarre's army had established a fortified camp. The King of Navarre sought to make himself ruler of France as well. He intended to press his claim by destroying the newly arrived royal forces.
Lors Battige s'estuie.
Les motones attendent votre commandement.
Courez-vous à l'arcé en 6 fêtes comme Dwayne. Pex beau destrier. Ivuis avant. Ça, avant. Perfect, à l'absode. Ceste vos commandements.
Besoin à faire.
Advertance se demande.
À votre commandement. Lors Battige s'estuie. Oh, me
On me fa au train. Ouais, j'y vais donc.
Dictez-moi une Versailles.
Que faut-il donc besoin?
Oyez les ordonnances.
Un besoin.
Oil, messieurs des mouets. Besoin. Chevauchee Bastille.
Dictez-moi. Oui, me faut-il frère.
Access vos, compagnon. Je suis dicté.
On me pas au trahir.
Nous soyons.
Manens, preis d'œuvrer. Lors Battige s'estuie.
Artiers, j'obtempère. Artiers, les commandements viennent. Ne demeurez Artiers,
Oyez tous le monde. Tous de gars, Laurence.
Artiers, prenez acte. Ayez sa tour de guerrier. Oh, c'est quoi, c'est bon.
Access continue.
Dictes vos commandements. Mettons-nous en la fouet.
Manens, reprends-en. Chevauchee Bastille. Oyez les ordonnances. Lors Battige s'estuie.
Que faut-il donc besoigner? Dostia Lorez. Besoin à faire? Chevauchee Bastille.
Bonne besogne expect.
Advertance tout le monde. Dostia Lorez. Oyez tout le monde. Oi, mestier de mouet.
Advertance tout le monde. En besoin.
obéis au commandement.
Oh, me fautrai.
Arrête tout le monde.
Vayez moi besoigne. Que faut-il donc besoigner?
Nord-est de Besogne.
Tiens! Oyez le commandement! Archer! Chacun l'exercice! Advisez votre Versailles! Archer! 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 Allons, sprint!
Non soyons on va servir. Si le ferait un toast.
Archer!
Compagnon, sur quoi me faut-il Chessmets vos Arbelestreus? Chascuns, elle sa place.
Adertan, seulement. Laissez-moi exploiter.
En besoigne. Giovanni Bastir.
Oyez les ordonnances.
Besoigne à faire?
Besoin de nous attendre. Manance. Besoin à faire.
Oil, mestière de moi.
Oyez les ordonnances.
Ma besoin.
Bien, vos
Si attendons sous les commandements.
Oyez bien.
Dictes vos commandements. Convent en la voie, sanglant. Mettons nous en la voie, fratre.
Mais ici les commandements. À chess annonce.
Voyez ma paix.
Non soyons. Jouez votre plaisir.
Mangonels assiste.
Adertan, on va servir.
Seconde votre commandement.
Compagnon, oyez bien. Compagnon. Compagnon, Jetstam vos guerres.
Or attendons ordonnance.
Voyez Brest comme
Dictes vos commandements.
Or attendons ordonnance. Tout est assis.
Non soyons.
Oyez, annonce ça, Trestou.
À chessmet, non soyons. Compagnon.
L'oreille, l'ancien. Ayez sa tour de guerriers. Ça.
Dictes.
avant, compagnon.
Engins de siège attendent vos ordonnances. Oyez.
Oyez les ordonnances. Si.
Non soyons.
Access vos compagnon.
Ancien.
Oyez compagnon, ça compagnon.
Dictes vos
Engins. Si sera affect.
Oyez tout. Oyez les ordonnances. Chevauchee Bastir.
Oh, me fautra.
Oyez tout le monde. Marchiez rien moins.
Attendons.
Space pied chasse boule, non soyons.
Reste tout à parler. Si.
Access.
Alors, les
Engins de siège. Si partons nos.
Le
Engins de siège. Si faute des guerpilles.
Adert, lors devance nos salaires. Marchiez rien moins, Trestouts.
attendez, les qu'on a perdu cette stock. Soyez Brest, comme si comme
Ancien.
Compagnon, soyez bien.
Non soyons.
Engins, prouvez si seuls engins.
oui, en votre service.
Correct, si već fais.
Dictes vos commandements.
Anjan
Attendez,
Comme
pessimista, compagnon.
Nos soyons, mec.
Anjan vos attendez. Si sera fait.
Advertans totalement si ves exploitier.
Arbelestre, acest Chivalry.
obéir, c'est vertu. Mon destrier Rimagne. Acest vos, compagnon.
Bon servir.
L'heure avant.
Dictes vos commandements.
Oyez les ordonnances. Tous de ya, Laurets.
L'heure est
Nos soyons.
Pushing up the hillside, the French discovered Charles of Navarre's camp. His front line had the high ground and was made up entirely of archers. The French would have to think carefully about how to approach the stronghold. The French army had repelled Charles of Navarre, stemmed the revolt, and held back the raids of the Routiers. In the struggle for control over France's lands, the king still clung to power. A warhorse was no ordinary horse. In battle, it was a knight's comrade in arms. By nature, horses are prey animals, but the warhorse had to become a predator. They had to be aggressive and fearless, to charge enemy lines and to trample anyone in their way. To achieve this, they were specially bred and highly trained to fight, to lash out with their hooves on command. This meant warhorses were expensive, and so conveyed high status.
Warhorses were incredibly strong and powerful, but they were also vulnerable. This is a really big target, and it's much easier to shoot a horse than it is to hit its rider. So just as men wore armor, horses wore armor too.
A knight didn't ride his warhorse on the road to battle. It was far too valuable. Instead, they were led by the knight's groom. A knight would take multiple warhorses on campaign, as he would need to change to a fresh horse several times during battle. Once geared up, the knight, his horse, and his weapons became a highly effective system.
The heavy cavalry lance had a small ring called a graper, and this locks into my arm, forming a hard linkage so that the lance can't shoot backwards on impact.
The war saddle was also crucial. With its high back, it locked the rider to the horse.
This means with the graper and the saddle, horse, man, and weapon are all locked together to create one giant horse-powered projectile.
The main purpose of heavy cavalry was to charge straight into the enemy and smash through their lines. The impact charge crashed into an enemy with terrifying force. It required horses with exceptional courage and power. With rebels and raiders eliminated at Cocherel, King Charles V faced one last threat to France: the relentless English invaders. Word arrived that the English army was weak and scattered, divided by infighting. The king quickly directed his army to chase down the old enemy of France at Pontvallain. The French town of Pontvallain lay directly in the path of marauding English soldiers on the hunt for loot. The town's only hope of survival lay with the French forces camped nearby. The French quickly prepared to ambush the disorganized English raiders and defend Pontvallain from ruin.
Colonel sunt ici. Mercat spect.
Ecce li mandament. Con me, una sial por la batteria.
Parat, l'anche soproioxa. Sigeme. Bene, bene.
Mandesqued. Labour Spérance. Vado laburar.
The main English army thundered into the valley. They paused to rest beyond the town before launching their raid.
Moment si est. In avant, arquer.
A small bandit camp lurked in the valley. If the French could defeat these routiers, they could claim the supplies they had gathered.
Pour la materia.
L'encaisse, moment, obedio. Parat, arquer. In avant. Préparat, allez, arquer. Tourna. L'encaisse, parat. Presente. Parate, arquers.
Toutes unités. Ascolte bene. Vado la burra. Non che barat. Arc audience. Si. Oye, oye. Squad labor, mande squad. Cos'è sarà massonata? Buon lavoro.
The first group of English raiders began their attacks on the outlying farms. After destroying the farms, they would attack the town of Pontvallain.
Cos'è sarà massonata?
Momentes ambula.
L'anche sparatas.
Parat porvenir.
L'anche barat.
Io ma sono la cose. Labour Spérance. Comme il trenca.
Barrière. Présentez l'encaisse.
Raté, arquère. In avant. 6 hommes. Si, caro. Qued me? Cos'è sarà massonata?
L'encaisse, sauf.
Prépare in avant, arquère.
Présente.
Parade, spade, arquère.
Labour Spérance. Felice et beat. Quid labor? Io ma sono la cose.
L'encaisse barata.
6 hommes. Negozio.
Quid ordine?
Ascolte bene.
Parade pour la bourra. Vado la bourra.
Barat porvenir. Vado labura.
Labour Spérance. Quid labour? Io ma sono la cose.
Paratus et promptus.
Quid.
Cavallo.
Prompt. Barrière. L'encaisse sopriosa.
Mandes quid. Por lo lucre.
L'encaisse barata. Présentez l'encaisse.
Yekte seguita. Momenti si arqué. Que usé. L'encaisse sopriosa. Si, si. Encaisse. Arrêtez, présentez l'encaisse.
L'encaisse sopriosa.
Parade.
Présentez l'encaisse.
Obeio. Si Espero tu mandemer en licans. Sperans Gloria.
L'encaisse baratas.
Parat Madatitos.
L'encaisse. Barrière et balai.
Quid orques?
L'encaisse sopriosa. In avant façade.
Esperansi. Comprehendes.
More scattered English raiders arrived and made their way towards Pontvallain.
Paratus et promptus.
L'encaisse sopriosa.
Quid ordine?
Venez.
Paratus Paratus et promptus.
Obedio.
Equites at...
Labour sperans. Inerans. Parats pour labourar. Mandesquid. Cose ser sisomes. Cose ser amazona. Colones. Paretis. Comme mitrenca. Tuts audite.
Sisomes.
Seco materia.
Présentez l'enquête.
Labour sperans. Io ma sono la cose.
L'enquête baratas.
Parats pour labourar. Vado labourar. Cose sera.
Pariez et prépariez l'enquête. Présentez l'enquête.
Wait, mais vado labourar.
L'enquête.
En linea equite. Quid orden? Chevauchee.
L'enquête. Venez.
Moment intendo. Preparate, archers.
L'enquête.
Moment si, archers. Audience.
Exals in avant.
Escolte bene. Parat pour venir. Vado pour mercare. Parat pour labourar. Io ma sono.
Sisomes. Vado labourar.
Parate. Equite sunt paratos.
Preparate, archers.
L'enquête perfectée.
Move equites.
Tourna.
Demandes. Parate, archers.
Présentez. Pariez et prépariez l'enquête. Si.
Parat. Si.
En equites quitte. Parate equites. Comme mondes.
Prompt. Preparate. Moment si, archers. Archers, parat. Moment si, archers.
L'enquête sopra. L'enquête baratas.
Moment.
Bene ascolté.
Paratus equites sunt paratus.
Parat. Bene, bene. Preparate, archers.
Tu présentez l'enquête. Si. L'enquête. Mais
Parat.
l'enquête.
Parate equites.
L'enquête. Parate, archers.
Mandesquid. Longtemps si bête exploité.
Dicte-moi mon Versailles.
Wait.
Lancière en plate. Lancière en or.
De vers Ulfolkit, archers.
More scattered English raiders arrived and made their way towards Pontvallain.
Preste portrait.
Je vais vos obéir.
De vers
Vassoy.
Si ça, le ferai-je donc. Dicte-moi mon Versailles. Madame, à vos 30 honneurs.
Oh non, si comme Pontvallain.
Dicte-moi mon Versailles. Preste portrait à Parmain.
Manuel Rassou.
De vers Ulfolkit, archers.
Nous sommes
Advertence.
On a Dicte-moi, archers.
Oyez les ordres. La 7 moelle exploit.
Preste portrait. Ayez de cure.
Soyez, je suis votre serveuse. Si comme vos volbrecht! À la sort votre service!
Bayern qui presse, sortez le reste!
De vers vous, faut-il archer! Man optimé! Ouais! Mon arc me met à la voie. Die engins de siège à 6. Dicte-moi mon Versailles! Les Sprangay attendent vos ordonnances. Quoi faut-il faire?
Dictez-moi une Versailles.
Oil, bestiaire de puissante famine!
Reste tout estatique!
Que faut-il donc besoigner?
Ouais, marchand, affaire.
Obeleste pareil.
Besoigne à faire?
Laisse-moi une
Oh
Versailles.
non, reste obéi.
Reste tout est à 6. Seconde votre commandement.
Obelestier, à pointe basse.
Oyet, Véichi, commandement.
Honnête-moi vos
d'espace.
chevaliers.
Lancière, l'oreille, lancière.
Dictez-moi une Versailles.
Reste hors votre service.
Ici, Glennoy.
Engin bon.
À l'arsenal, chevalier.
Une autre Versailles. Sur quoi me faut-il faire? À Chestnut Boss. Sivey.
Engin de siège attendent vos... Oui, si sera fait.
Sommes en ordonnance.
Engin boss à...
Compagnon, à Chestnut Boss. Allez, je gagne mon gage.
Or, attendons ordonnance. Siège, attendons vos ordonnances. Courage, sisters, engines. Courage, l'entier. En Versailles, donc. Au passe, compagnon.
Sur quoi me faut... À Chestnut Boss, Obelestière. Alors, Chestnut Boss habillement. Chestnut Boss habillement.
Que faut-il donc besoigner? Nous cueillons les fruits des marchandises. Chevauchee Bastille.
Oil, mestier des mouets. Dostoya Laurez. Longtemps bat-il demeurer.
Quoi faut-il faire?
Oui, marchand d'affaires.
L'entière, gardez de boss. Faites-vous, oui, comme...
Chestnut Boss Obelestre. Chestnut, oui, à Barbey.
À l'arsenal, chevalier. Si fait.
Quoi faut-il faire?
Homme fauteuil.
The English army chose their moment and began to close in on Pontvallain.
Obelestier, à pointe à Chestnut Boss Obelestre.
Oui, marchand
Sommes en
Obelestre.
Reste tout est à 6. Reste tout est à 6.
Oyez les ordonnances.
Oui, là.
Lors bâtis s'essuient.
En besoigne.
Chevalier.
Chessmetz vos habillement. Au balestier. Chessmetz avant au balestier.
Engine de 6 sera affect.
Chevalier. Sommes en ordre.
Lancière, en ordre. La lance presse.
Au balestier.
Engine de siège. Engine vos attendent.
Reste avant.
Compagnie si veille faire.
Chess au balestier.
Engine à parmeille.
À l'arson.
Ayez de sa tour de guerriers. Ça.
Au balestre, comme il vous plaît.
Reste oyer. Lancière, oui, compagnie.
Au balestre.
Engine vos attendent.
Avant. Comme il vous plaît.
Je lance, mais essayez. Et engin de siège à 6. Or attendons ordonnance.
Dites de si, obéissez à vos commandements. En balestier, à pointier de balle.
Les springay attendent vos ordonnances.
Voiture incontinent.
Obéissez au commandement.
Obelet annonce à Parmeil. Obelet, je gagne.
Où sont les commandements?
Or attendons son.
Dicte on la voie pour bataille.
Les engins reste tous estasis. On gagne pour le monter. Engins de siège attendent vos ordonnances. Or attendons ordonnance. Les Mongonais attendent vos ordonnances. Wo ist compagnon? Wo ist?
Ainsi d'envoyer les avions moins.
Regimendement.
Quels sont vos commandements?
Jetsmes vos aviament.
Les commandements. Mettons
Uniforme Pigretoué, vos compagnons. Surveille votre commandement. J'ai les clés de marché. Oui, compagnons.
Engine vos reste tous à l'once. L'urgence de siège à 6.
Les Chevaucheurs s'escoutent, les Chevaucheurs sont prêts.
Well, oyez.
Engine vos abandonne. Reste tout à
Les commandement.
Où faut-il faire? Votre financière se veut. Or, attendons surveillance. Estraguet, accorde vos ordonnances. Estraguet, si sera fait.
Obéleste, c'est de bonne
Engine seconde vos ordonnances. Urgence de siège à 6.
Obéleste, un Jetsmes vos. Obéleste, oui, amarré.
Compagnon, Chivos ordonnances.
Je vais vous obéir.
Compagnon. Oral,
Regimendement.
ici les commandements.
Ordonnance à 6. Estraguet, engin de siège, attendez vos ordonnances.
Jetsmes vos obéleste.
Dicte-moi ma besogne.
After a hard-won battle against a scattered enemy, the French succeeded in halting the English Chevauchee at Pontvallain. The English army was not invincible. The French cause was not yet lost. Longbows were powerful weapons, but keeping archers supplied with ammunition was a major undertaking.
This is a modern arrow. Small and lightweight. Pretty much what everyone shoots these days. Compared to this, medieval war arrow. Look at the size of this thing. It's a beast.
A medieval army might need more than 1 million war arrows on campaign, and each one had to be made by hand. It was a labor-intensive business, and the person who did it was called a fletcher. First, a log is split into square staves. Then the fletcher uses a plane to start roughing out the shape.
Ugh, how do I get it round?
Not only have you got to make it round, you've got to make it bobtailed. Look at that.
Bobtailed?
You see that's coming down thinner down that end? There's a natural taper coming down there to that end.
A plane with a curved blade is used to create the taper. This makes the arrow aerodynamic.
This is an incredibly painstaking process for one arrow.
Most of them are just for one shot as well.
Next, a slot is cut to receive a piece of horn. The horn reinforces the nock. That's the notch that fits the arrow to the bowstring. Without the horn insert, the power of a heavy warbow could split and shatter an arrow. Once the horn is in place, the nock is sawn and shaped. Then the fletcher has to attach the feathers to the shaft.
Now what you've got to do is you've got to get rid of the stiffness of the quill. You're going to work it down so it's nice and thin.
So this is dogfish skin?
Yeah, medieval sandpaper.
The feathers are glued in place and then secured with thread. The final process is to arm the arrow with its arrowhead. The person who makes these is called an arrowsmith. From a blank piece of iron, he starts with the part that fits over the arrow shaft. First, he makes the bar flat, then uses a special former to create a socket. The final stage is to hammer out the shape of the head. Arrow stocks had to be prepared far in advance of a campaign. It was impossible to make them in sufficient numbers overnight. A medieval war arrow like this could only be shot from a big, exceptionally powerful bow. And it packed a mighty punch.